After a few moments of torture, because I was in this room by myself, surrounded by all of these pregnancy posters and informationals, and the nurse comes in and she said, "You're pregnant." And it was definitely challenging. It was very intimidating and scary and embarrassing even to say.
I think we get scared and we put ourselves in a box and we think, oh my gosh, this is going to crush me.
It was incredibly challenging trying to maneuver being a young single mother and not giving up on going to school. I knew you were going to make me cry, but I didn't know it was going to be this soon in the conversation.
Today, we're sitting down with an incredible guest whose journey is nothing short of inspiring. She was the first in her family to graduate from college, but she didn't stop there. She went on to earn her master's and doctorate degree, all while navigating the challenges of being a student mom. Now, as the director of student mom advocacy for Baby Steps at Auburn University, she's leading the charge in transforming the experience for student moms, offering them the support, resources, and empowerment she once needed herself. I'm so excited for you to hear this incredible story of one of our very own team members, Patrina Dow. If this podcast has ever inspired or encouraged you, we would love for you to take a moment to leave us a 5-star review. Your reviews help boost our rankings, allowing more people to find and hear these important stories. We also invite you to become a financial supporter of this podcast, helping us spread this message to college campuses across the country. If you believe that no student mom should have to face an unplanned pregnancy alone, you can make a tax-deductible donation through the link in our show notes. Every gift, big or small, helps continue this life-changing work. And without further ado, let's welcome Patrina Dow to Unplanned and Untold. Patrina, I am so excited to introduce you today. Patrina is our Director of Student Mom Advocacy at our Baby Steps Auburn Hub, and she too experienced an unplanned pregnancy in college, which makes her the perfect fit for this role. Patrina, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Definitely. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Oh, we're so excited to have you and to hear a little bit of your story. I bet you some of our student moms are also going to listen if I had a clue. So talk to us about what was your upbringing like before you went to college, before you had this big unplanned pregnancy moment?
Well, I would say my upbringing, it was pretty cool. My mom, she was a single mom from the moment I turned 12 and we lost our dad. So she was doing everything on her own with me and my two sisters. And so we kind of settled here back in Alabama after traveling as a military family, big family, very family oriented. And so that was kind of what my support looked like in each aspect of my life. And so when we got ready to go to college and join adult life, it was a bit of a different experience because we're first generation. And when I say we, I mean me and my twin sister. We do everything together. And so first generation college students, nobody else attended school, let alone graduated. And so that's a big part of my history.
Yes, that's a huge deal. So you and your twin sister, what prompted the two of you to be the first in your family to want to do this?
I think it was just kind of wanting to change that cycle. We wanted to show our family that, yes, we're from this little small town called Alpine, but we can get out and we can take those extra steps. We don't have to be stuck there. And I really think that being raised as military children, it really opened our eyes to what's out there, and that helped give us that push to say, let's do this. Let's do something different than what's typically been done in the family.
And I love it because you have your built-in bestie with your sister. And y'all are two really close to today as well, right?
Definitely. Very, very close. My built-in bestie, as you said.
I love it. I love it so much. So what college did you end up attending, and what were your dreams for the future before you found out you were pregnant?
So we started out at AUM. Right there in Montgomery. So that was the very first experience with college. We participated in a lot of different clubs and organizations, just having a grand old time and really getting that college experience. Networking was a big part that we learned early on. So just kind of jumping into different aspects and just mixing and mingling. And so the goal initially was to do nursing. We were going to
Okay.
try our hand at nursing. And that didn't kind of fit. It didn't, we decided that
Okay.
was not what we wanted to do. And then so we just kind of pivoted, shifted. We had to find our footing. For me personally, it just took a lot of trial and error, things that I wanted to do before I landed on psychology and counseling. And so that's what kind of
Wow.
opened up the world that I'm in currently.
Okay. So your suspicion of being pregnant, take our listeners back to that scary moment. Was there something, some alarm that went off in your head that was like, oh my goodness, I could be pregnant? And also, how old were you when all of this happened?
So, um, when I kind of had the suspicion of being pregnant, I knew my body like clockwork. Nothing was out of
Okay.
order, nothing out of place. Everything was exactly how it was supposed to be. And then there was a shift. And I was like, okay, this never happens. You know, things started tasting different. A lot of things just started happening. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then, of course, that monthly visitor did not show up. And at that moment,
It tells all that darn
just-
aunt Flo.
it just tells all. And so I didn't do like regular traditional pregnancy tests from the store or anything like that. For one, because I was scared to go and purchase that. Like, I didn't want to go in the store.
Yes. We hit on this
So-
topic, and if you've been listening for a while, our listeners will be like, oh, she's talking about this again. But going into the stores, these women these days will never fully understand the stigma of having to, they didn't even have self-checkout when I was pregnant. I'm assuming you
Right.
too.
Yes.
So you could even like slide it in at self-checkout or Amazon Prime it to your door. So you said,
Right.
no, I'm not going through that
No.
humiliation. You went straight to the doctor.
I went straight to the doctor, and I had my sister come with me just for that added layer because I didn't know what was gonna happen. But she stayed out in the car. She didn't come in with me. I told her like I'm gonna go for this quick checkup, and I just need you to ride with me. I didn't tell her it was for a pregnancy test. So when I went in, I said, I need a pregnancy test. I think I'm pregnant. So we did the test and she set me in the room. And then after a few moments of torture, because I was in this room by myself, surrounded by all of these pregnancy posters and informationals, and the nurse comes in and she said, "You're pregnant." And I didn't hear anything else after that. Nothing
was
else.
it.
That was
No.
it.
Oh my
so
goodness.
in the couple of moments that I had to process before she came in with like packaged information, and there was like some sample vitamins and all of that, and I actually still have all of this in like a little box.
No way.
I still
No
have
way.
it all. But she gave me all of this, and I was like, okay, thank you, and set up the next appointment. But I went out to my sister, and I told her, I said, guess what they just told me? And she said, you're pregnant. And I just started
knew.
crying. Yeah, she knew. I just started crying, and we kind of hugged in the parking lot. And then it was just so much to process in that moment of, wow, this is actually happening. So,
Absolutely. And how old were you? What year were you in college at this point?
so I had just turned 21, actually. I was still considered in that late freshman term because I was finding my footing, bouncing around, trying to decide what I wanted to do. And there was a period of time before that where I even left the school to go to like a 2-year community college. So it was a lot of different
Right.
things leading up to that. And when I found out that I was pregnant, it was the fall semester, and I'd finally landed on what I wanted to do.
course.
Grades were good, classes were going well, and then I find out that I'm pregnant. So
Surprise. So how does your twin sister react to this information? I mean, you told her in the parking lot or while you were in the car?
in the parking lot. We were standing in the parking lot, and she was, of course, not judgmental or anything like that. She embraced me because she saw the emotion all in my face, and I just started crying. So we just kind of stood there in silence for a moment in a hug. And she was already a parent at that point, so she kind of had already gone through all of that, and so she was able to just kind of give me some words of encouragement, and help me get through that moment of hearing this news. So I'm happy that she was able to come with me.
I mean, it's so wild too, the fact that your sister also, I mean, how old was her baby at that point?
So her baby had just turned 3.
Oh
Yes,
my
she,
goodness.
yeah, so she was a seasoned parent at that point.
The comfort in that, though, to know that your best friend also has walked through this
Yes,
and is able to guide you through it. And she, you know, like she's made it. That baby's 3. She made it through that newborn
exactly.
season and all of the crazy to be able to give you all of the advice you need. I mean, we always need advice no matter how old our kids are, but that newborn season's scary, especially when you're in
Yes,
school.
especially in school. And just, the relationship that I had with my child's father at the time, it wasn't that great. And so I'd kind of gone into it
Okay.
with the mindset of knowing, yeah, I'm going to have to do this alone. And so it was
Right.
really comforting knowing that she'd been there and she was definitely on board for full support. So,
Absolutely. So, how do you break this news to mom?
so I told her, and I remember this clearly, but um, we were getting ready to go somewhere, and my sister was buckling her son into his car seat, and I looked at my mom and I told her, I said, "You're gonna have another one." She's like, "Another what?" Because we were getting ready to go to the store, so she didn't know what I was talking about. I said, "Well, another grandchild." She said, "You're pregnant?" "Yes, I am." And that's exactly how the conversation went. She wasn't upset or anything. She
Okay.
was kind of excited to have another baby coming into the picture. But that's exactly how I broke the news to her. I had
Oh
to
my
really just kind of
gosh.
build up that courage to say, how can I say this? And that's what came out.
And rip the band-aid
Just
right on
ripped it
off.
off. So you're going to have another
I
one.
just
Yeah.
feel all of the different ways I've heard women tell their moms that they're pregnant. There's no really right way. I
It's
mean, it's
not.
shocking. No matter how you say it. I could tell you there are probably some ways that I wouldn't tell them the way that I told my parents. I wouldn't do it. I've heard some other ways where I'm like, ooh, not sure, going in with a whole basket and ultrasound picture and onesie like gift, probably a little much. We had a guest talk about how she wished she also didn't jump in that way, but really no exact perfect way to tell mom. But it's so awesome to hear that she was supportive. So you had 2 people in your corner supporting you and there for you as you processed all of this.
Yeah, and it was very scary to have to tell my mom because she wanted, of course, the best for us. And I won't say necessarily that she was super strict, but we had a level of respect for her where we didn't want to let her down. And so just kind of breaking the
Absolutely.
news to her that, okay, this is not what we wanted. This is not how it was supposed to happen, but you're gonna have another one, and just kind of brace myself for
Yes.
what was gonna come next, but pleasantly surprised that she took it rather well, and that may have been her way of processing it, but I'm just grateful
Right.
for that reaction.
Yes.
So
And so you still had quite a bit of schooling to get through. So did you experience being pregnant on campus like throughout your entire pregnancy?
I did. I was on campus the entire pregnancy. The only time that I was not on campus was the summer that she was born. I did all of my classes online. So from like that
Okay.
May to beginning August or late July semester, I did online classes. And she was born August 2nd. So we were kind of in between semesters at that point. So, and it was
Okay.
definitely challenging. It was very intimidating and scary and embarrassing, even to say.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of making the choice to be physically present while being pregnant. And I was like 100 pounds. I was all belly. So it was very, very
Right.
noticeable. I could not
Yeah.
hide that, and so
Oh my
having to
goodness.
just kind of walk around. And before the pregnancy, we were very involved with
Okay.
campus. And so this was a very different thing. People wondering, where are you? Are you going to do this? That presence kind of changed. And it
Yes.
was bittersweet having to grow up in that moment and let go of those fun college years to put on my mummy cap.
Right.
And it was a different experience for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the piece that stumps people is when you are pregnant on campus. I almost felt like people thought I couldn't participate anymore in a lot of the extracurricular activities that I was involved in. I mean, I was a president of a club on
Yeah.
campus, and immediately that official from the university was like, oh, you can no longer be the president. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself, the baby's not here yet, we
Right.
have plenty of time. I just always thought it was very interesting that
Yeah.
stigma just seemed to be so incredibly thick that even before the baby had arrived and nothing had changed, I mean, short of an extra doctor's appointment and the
Right.
big belly, I was fully capable of everything prior to getting pregnant as I was when I was pregnant. But yet I felt like there was this other shoe I was waiting to drop with people just wondering, is she going to stay as involved and can she while she's pregnant? Did you feel the same way?
100%. And, to an extent, I get that, maybe there was an image that they wanted for the other young ladies on campus of,
Sure.
maybe not wanting to have the forefront of some of these organizations being a pregnant college student, especially
Right.
with the true freshmen that were coming in and that may have been kind of looking up to me in certain aspects. Like I was the president of the psychology club, and we had
See?
a lot of students who were interested, and so I had to kind of
Right.
step back from a lot of those roles just
Yeah.
so I wouldn't, in a sense, portray the wrong message.
I think where my feathers get ruffled a little bit is I wasn't the only one that was sexually active in that club. I wasn't
Exactly.
the only officer that was sexually active, but because I had gotten pregnant, it was like, okay, now this is a different story. So it
Right.
wasn't about the premarital sex so much as it was you got caught and now we don't want this image associated. And that does impact you. I mean,
Yeah.
I think out of all of the wounds that I have from being pregnant, people trying to push me out of places that I worked really hard for and earned, just like that president role, I worked my booty off to get president of that club on a campus. That's a really big deal. And it was my second year. And I'll never forget it. One of our advisors had called all of the parents of this club. So it was called Best Buddies. And it was when you're matched with somebody in college, college age, that has intellectual disabilities. And she had called all of the parents of Best Buddies and was like, this is what's going on. We all need to come together and vote Caitlin out.
Wow.
And my Best Buddies parents called me, and I'll never forget it. And they invited me over to their house and sat me down, and I'm visibly pregnant. And they tell me the news that, they had just been called and there was going to be this vote against me. And they were like, we don't believe in this. We're all for you staying in this position. Like, this doesn't change anything. Like, we still love you. And I just remember the tears streaming down my
Wow.
face because
Yeah.
I mean, I was 21 as well, so young. I had worked so hard for that position, and nothing was going to change if I stepped down or not. Yes, the image doesn't look as great, but also, what about the image of the student mom that has the grit to continue college, even
Exactly. And is killing it, right?
Yes, yes. And so I can totally feel all of those emotions that you
Yeah.
had with that club. So stepping back, did you feel like, did you feel that it was an unfair treatment, or did you feel like you still could be involved, but just less in front of everybody, more behind the scenes?
I feel like I could have continued to be involved behind the scenes, but at the time, I just kind of opted to just separate myself and just kind of
Okay.
focus on the things that were coming up. And so when I parted with the different organizations that I was a part of, I didn't leave with any, ill feelings or anything like that. It was
Right.
pretty amicable, I guess. But it was also the end of that. I never did join back into those things. I still kept those relationships. I feel like if I were to email or call today, I could have a conversation with them. But after the pregnancy and after I separated myself, that was the end of those stories for me. So
that makes complete sense.
yeah.
For my son, I decided to hang in there a little longer, not as president, but more behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I would bring my son to these events, and I had pictures of him with our buddies, just little babies. And they had never held babies before either. And there's my son being passed around. It is the sweetest thing. And it's so funny, Patrina, because I don't know if you've seen this show, Love on the Spectrum. It just came out on Netflix.
No, I haven't seen
But
it.
oh, it's so good. It follows a storyline of people with intellectual disabilities kind of blind dating. It's really sweet. And yes, my son just was asking all these questions, and I was like, you've been around, this population of people since you were a baby, since mom was in college and was able to show him a picture. So it's so sweet to have those memories and to land on a good note. So what were your biggest challenges for your daily routines once you became a mom and you're still pursuing that college degree?
I think the biggest challenges, and this is even with the support that I had, the biggest challenge was kind of like the childcare aspect. So there weren't a lot of options as far as, being able to be a full-time student, and now I'm a mom, so I have to have income coming in. I'm doing it as a single parent, but I couldn't put all of that responsibility on my sister because she was also a mother, and I couldn't put it on my mom because she had her own life, she had to work and all of those things. So it was incredibly challenging trying to maneuver being a young single mother and not giving up on going to school. And that was the hardest part. So we were able to kind of juggle staggered classes so that my sister could watch her while I was in class and, and all of that kind of good stuff. It was by far one of the hardest things that I've done. And so, of course, with having to do that, I prolonged graduation. I had to take as much time. There were some failed classes in there. It wasn't successful all of the time. And so there were a lot of things that were kind of in the mix that I had to adjust to and pivot. But that childcare aspect, even with all of the support that I had, it felt like sometimes it was just never enough. Never enough support. So
no. Do you feel like there were sacrifices looking back that you made so that you could continue your education?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I had to sacrifice a lot with my social life. I had to sacrifice a lot with doing the things, of course, that I was doing on campus. So some of the networking pieces, and in the times that I was able to go and have fun, even, there was a time limit on it. Like I couldn't hang out all night like my friends could, like we used to do, before the baby. And so I would have to just kind of hang out for an hour or two, and then I had to go home and parent. And then, watching the other people still out and having fun while I'm sitting at home. And I don't regret any of it, but it just thinking back on it, it was so different and it was so sudden. The difference came very suddenly. So it was definitely an adjustment for sure.
Absolutely. And then finishing your degree, I mean, as a first generation college graduate, what are the emotions that came with accomplishing something so huge while parenting?
I cried. Oh my goodness. I chose not to walk across the stage once I finally finished my degree, because I think at that point I was so over it.
You're like, I'm done. I got my certificate.
Yeah, so we chose not to walk. But when it came in the mail, and we opened out because my mom, it went to her address, of course, and so she had it was a rolled up, it wasn't an envelope, but it was like a tube. So it was
like
in a tube.
yes.
Yeah. And so when I opened it out and saw my name on this degree, I just started crying. My mom started crying. Everyone is just crying because this is a really big accomplishment. And now it's physically, tangibly here on paper, and no one could take that from me. And so I was super excited. And that in that moment, I realized that I actually did it. It became real.
Yes.
And so,
absolutely.
yes.
People ask all the time when I do other podcast interviews, what was the best moment, even of your life? Like, if you could go back, like, what is the most proud moment of your entire life? And I tell my husband, I love you, but it's not the day we got married. It's the day I graduated.
Yes.
Because that is something that you work so incredibly hard for. And then when you have the odds stacked against you,
Yes.
and you're
Oh my
taking care of
goodness.
a human being and trying to navigate life on campus, finishing all of your classes, graduation is just such an insane accomplishment, and something, like you said, nobody can ever take that away from you. It is done and just is a huge part of who you are for the rest of your life.
It for sure. And, throughout my undergraduate degree, after I had my daughter, and of course, classes were increasingly difficult. Things were very, very hard. So I didn't finish at AUM. I had to transfer basically for a fresh start. And I actually got my degree from Faulkner. And so just kind of making that transition and, pulling those classes over. And of course, when you transfer, not everything transfers. Sometimes you have to have certain credits and everything. And so I set myself back just a little bit more, but I look at it as kind of like a slingshot, pulling myself back just to throw myself forward. And during some of those classes, there were times where I had to bring her to class with me. And we would literally have to sit in class together. We would sit in the back of the class, but they were relatively smaller classes. So everyone knew she was there. But no one really made a big deal out of it. Even, some of my teachers would be like, oh, there's our youngest student. And so I remember I had a statistics class. And so a lot of times he would use the class size in some of the in the statistics. And so when it came to like age ranges, he would say, okay, our youngest student is 3 and our oldest student is XYZ. And so things like that really kind of helped me to stay focused and not feel embarrassed of walking into this class with all of my peers and I have to bring my baby with me because there's no one to watch her. It was hard. It was embarrassing. However, those few professors that were understanding, that were parents, that just kind of made it a little less hard for me. And I am forever indebted to them. So.
It's like those professors are the secret champions. Like, they're championing you the entire time, and you're just so grateful because it really does impact you for the rest of your life. It truly does.
For sure. Yes.
I've got a couple professors that are forever on the Christmas card list. Every year they're getting a Christmas card because they play such a huge role. Absolutely. Yeah. So do you think your unplanned pregnancy changed the direction of your career? I mean, do you think it helped you pivot into something that you love to do now?
Absolutely. For one, the director of student mom advocacy, when I heard about this opportunity, I absolutely had to jump on this because, coming from my background and being a student mom, it is incredibly hard. I could have had all of my ducks in a row. I could have had the best support system in the world, and it would have still been incredibly hard. And so just knowing that there's this program out there that is designed to help student moms be successful, and I said, I have to be a part of that. And if I hadn't have experienced it, I probably wouldn't have heard of the program or have been interested or a good fit for that matter. And so that's one piece. And then the marriage and family therapy aspect, that hat that I wear, I chose that because being a mom and going through being a single parent, getting married and having a combined family, all of those different points of my life definitely influenced the role that I wanted to take on and the advocacy that I wanted to bring to other people. So my little one, she definitely played a huge role in all of the decisions that I've made education-wise and career-wise. So
it's so beautiful, because I don't think our listeners know, but you didn't stop at pursuing just an undergrad.
No.
Go on and tell them,
going.
She just kept going, y'all.
And the funny thing about it is my daughter, she told me she was proud of me. And that was the fuel that I needed to keep going. And so once I finished my bachelor's, she was around 3 years old. She might have just turned 4. So I went instantly into my master's degree program. And so completed the master's, went straight into my doctorate. There were no breaks in between. And I think it's because it took so long to do my undergrad and I struggled so much. And I was like, no, I'm not going to stop. I owe it to myself to take this as high as I can get it. So,
wow. It's so beautiful. So all of you listeners, if you are experiencing an unplanned pregnancy and you're struggling to get through undergrad, keep going. Keep going. It is going to come together. Grad school is not off the table. I mean, nothing is off the table.
I knew you were going to make me cry, but I didn't know it was going to be this soon in the conversation.
I think we get scared and we put ourselves in a box and we think, oh my gosh, this is going to crush me. Am I ever going to make it even out of undergrad?
Exactly.
And then there's women like you that it lights a fire underneath you. And you're like, not only am I going to be the first one in my family to graduate, but you continued to hit milestone after milestone in the educational world, and having your daughter cheer you on in that process. Definitely. I mean, that's a domino effect in her life to see all that you've overcome.
For sure. And one of the biggest things is I want her to know that no matter what life throws at her, she can accomplish whatever she wants. So
yes. So if you could go back in time, Patrina, and you could talk to your 21-year-old self as that doctor comes in or that nurse says, yeah, you're pregnant, what advice would you give yourself in that moment? What would you want to hear?
I think that if I could go back and tell myself something, it would be to continue on, to continue to stay motivated and encouraged, because I didn't know the challenges that were going to come. I had to take it a day at a time. And so I would definitely give myself a hug and let myself know not to be scared or intimidated, but to continue to pursue those goals, because it's going to be okay. So,
It is. It always ends up the way that it should be.
Definitely.
Well, Patrina, thank you so much for sharing your heart and your journey with our listeners, and for overcoming all of those obstacles and you being a beacon of hope for student moms that are walking through this and have dreams of the sky is the limit for them in the educational realm. So thank you again. And to all of our listeners, we hope to have you back for our next episode of Unplanned and Untold. Bye-bye. Unplanned and Untold drops new episodes every other Wednesday. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a 5-star review if you love this episode. I'm Caitlin Willing, and this is Unplanned and Untold.